The Mafia's Good Girl, Chapter 13. Violet's point of view. Last night was the strangest, most perplexing and ludicrous night Violet had ever experienced in her life. She lay awake that night in bed, replaying the events that transpired, and she still couldn't make sense of it come daylight. Violet let out a long sigh and rolled off the bed. The sunlight was streaming through the window as she pushed the curtains to the side. From her bedroom window, Violet got a view overlooking the garden of the estate. Violet never noticed it before, but now she saw how there were cameras everywhere around the estate, and there were guys in black suits walking around. They were probably the guards doing their rounds. Violet knew escaping out of here on foot would be downright stupid and impossible. The only way she could get out of here was if Damon finalized the deal and she would be set free, along with an extra $1 million in her bank account. Make no mistake, I will take your virginity, but you won't know when or how and where, or just how hard I would go. You are mine now, sweet girl. You better get used to it. Violet shuddered as she remembered Damon's words from last night. She turned away from the window and went to her phone. Dylan sent her a text, asking when she would be home today, and Violet had to again tell him that she won't be coming home today. Violet sighed as Dylan asked when would she be coming back. She would tell him if she knew, but she was just as clueless as ever. Violet put her phone away and decided to walk out of her room. Every breakfast, lunch and dinner, Elena would usually come into her room to deliver her food. She didn't have to leave the room for anything, and she could still stay alive. But Violet couldn't stand another minute alone in there with her thoughts. She needed answers, or some type of hope. Anything really. Without thinking too much of it, Violet marched right to Damon's office. She knocked on the door several times, but there was no answer. And when she tried to open the door, it was locked. It was as if there was no one there. Violet didn't want to give up. She scoured the halls before going down to the kitchen, and she found Elena and the other maids cooking breakfast that could feed an entire army. "Miss Violet, what are you doing here?" Elena asked. "I would deliver your breakfast to your room in a minute." "No, forget that," Violet said rather curtly. "Where's Damon?" The other maids looked up instinctively, as if Violet had said a bad word. "Mr. Van Zandt is out on business," Elena replied. "When will he be back?" Violet demanded. "I don't know, Miss Violet." Elena shook her head. "He left very early this morning." Violet let out a frustrated groan before stomping away from the kitchen. The other maids were looking at her and whispering, but Violet paid no mind. She was desperate to find Damon. She wanted answers. Keeping her here against her will should be illegal. Violet started wandering aimlessly around the estate. A part of her was wishing that she might somehow stumble into Damon. Another part of her was wondering if there were any secret exit passageways out of the building. After about an hour or so of wandering, Violet found herself deep inside the garden, and she stumbled into a small cottage that had a small cross on the roof. The wall bricks looked run down compared to the majestic estate building behind it. The large wooden door in the middle was also dirty and unkempt. It seemed like this little cottage hadn't been cleaned in years. Violet found the little cottage peculiar, and she decided to push the wooden door open. The door was heavy, and it creaked very loudly as it moved. The room inside was dark, but Violet could make out what it was. It was a small church. There were short benches along the sides, and a small altar at the end of the room. There was even an old piano in the corner of the room. "Are you looking for someone?" Violet almost shrieked in shock. She quickly whipped her head around and saw a familiar girl with long wavy black hair, staring right at her. "Talia?" She gaped. "Oh my God, Violet." Talia was also surprised to see her. "You're still here?" "Yup, I am." Violet sighed and walked away from the church. "Wait, does that mean?" Talia waited for a response from Violet. "He still hasn't done it." Violet shook her head and shrugged. "Oh," Talia narrowed her eyes and frowned. "That's odd. I have another word for it, but I'm not gonna say it. Violet crossed her arms, pausing for a beat before continuing. Talia, you said he'd do it in 3 nights. It was the 3rd night last night. What went wrong? I don't know. This is not how Damon normally operates, Talia said. Talia seemed to be thinking hard about something, and she let out a sigh. Violet studied her face, and she knew Talia had something on her mind that she wasn't telling her. What is it? Violet asked. You're not gonna like this, but Adrian and Damon are on the way to the airport now. They have a business to take care of in Rome. It might be a few days to a week before they get back, Talia said with a sorry smile. A few days to a week. Violet gaped. How long am I gonna be stuck here for? Violet groaned and slapped her head with her hand. Waiting here for another week felt torturous. Damon really screwed her over with this deal. I want to say, I'm sorry, but I'm actually happy you're still here, Talia said cautiously. I'm really selfish, aren't I? I don't blame you. I'd go crazy if I'm stuck in here for a long time too, Violet sighed. But then she noticed Talia glancing away, and she felt bad for saying that. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that you're crazy, she said again. No, I get it. You weren't born here. You never lived. Your whole life here. This kind of thing must be new to you, Talia replied, smiling reassuringly. It really is, Violet agreed. This place was new, strange, and bizarre. And the more she stays here, the worse it'll be for her mental health. Damon and his sick mind games might break her apart. Talia, I don't know what to do. I really want to go home. My mom and brother are waiting for me, and I miss them. Violet said again. She didn't mean to cry, but tears were pooling around her eyes. She felt so weak and powerless, and Talia seemed like someone that could understand. Talia stepped closer and pulled Violet into a hug. Violet ended up sobbing uncontrollably onto Talia's shoulder as she stroked her hair. I'm so sorry this is happening to you. I knew Damon is crazy, but I didn't think he'd be this crazy to keep a girl hostage against her will, Talia sighed. Violet couldn't respond in words, but her tears were agreeing with Talia. Hey, if you really want to get out of here, I might have an idea, Talia said suddenly. It's kind of dangerous, but I'll do it, Violet said without batting an eye. She pulled away from Talia and wiped the tears off her face. You haven't even heard it yet, Talia said. I don't care. I'll do anything. What do you have in mind? Well, first of all, leaving by force would not be an option. You won't stand a chance against the guards and their guns, Talia explained. Yeah, I figured as much, Violet scoffed. So your best option is to get Damon wrapped around your little finger. If he follows through with the deal, he'll have no option but to let you go. Wrap Damon around my little finger? Violet narrowed her eyes at Talia in confusion. But how am I gonna do that? That's where I come in. Talia smiled and leaned closer into her ear. Here's what you need to do. Damon's point of view. Everything's good and ready to go, boss, Liam said as he came out of the pilot's cockpit. We're taking off in 10 minutes. Good. Damon nodded at him. Damon, Adrian, and several of his most trusted guys were on his private plane parked in Newark Airport. They left early in the morning as they had urgent matters to attend to in Rome. Damon was busy working from his phone as he waited for their plane to take off. Adrian was sitting across from him, and Liam was giving him updates every several minutes or so. Oh, and boss, there's also one other thing, Liam trailed. What? Damon said, without lifting his eyes up. I got a report from the guys in the estate. A girl was caught trying to escape from the gates. What girl? Violetcarvey, boss. Damon's eyes shot up instinctively. What? He demanded. But they got her. They put her in her room, and a guard is posted on the door to watch her 24/7. Liam said quickly. Stop the plane. Sir? I said stop the goddamn plane. Liam didn't need to be told again. He quickly raced back to the cockpit and told the pilot to stop everything. Damon unbuckled his seatbelt angrily, and Adrian gave him a look. "What are you doing?" Adrian asked. "I'm going back," Damon said simply. "What? But we have a meeting with—" "You go." Damon cut him off. Adrian looked at Damon in total disbelief. "Damon, I'm only the consigliere." "He'd want to talk to you in person," Adrian argued. "Tell him I got an urgent matter to deal with at home." "What urgent matter?" "That waitress girl." Adrian scoffed. "No one defies Damon Van Zandt." Damon declared, "If I can't even keep my own house in order, should I even bother doing anything?" Adrian swallowed hard, as he didn't have an answer to that. He could only watch in silence as Damon went to the door and pulled the emergency brake to get the door open. Damon's steps were filled with anger and rage. Within an hour, he made it back to the estate, and he was now standing in front of Violet's door. A guard was standing and guarding the door, and he bowed his head when he saw Damon. "Leave," Damon said. "Yes, sir." He nodded and quickly went away. Damon took a deep breath before pushing the door open. Last night, the girl slapped him across the face, and this morning she was trying to escape. She really needs to be taught a lesson that Damon Van Zandt is not a man she could mess with. Damon slammed the door open in rage, and it made a loud banging sound. He spotted Violet standing by the window, and she had her back turned to him. "How dumb do you have to be that you tried to escape?" Damon was roaring. But Violet turned around suddenly, and she cut him off. "You came back," she said with a smile. Damon found it odd that she wasn't even surprised in the slightest. In fact, it looked as if she was expecting him. Violet took a step closer to him, and she was wearing a thin silk robe. Once she stood right in front of him, Violet pulled on the robe, and it fell instantly to the floor. "Oops," she said. Violet stood naked before Damon. Damon's eyes shot open in shock. He had seen plenty of naked girls before, but this one caught him by surprise. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing. It slipped." She shrugged and batted her eyes. Her hands then reached for him, and they landed on his broad chest. Her fingers slipped through his suit jacket, and she pulled the suit down with ease. "You never were gonna escape, were you?" Damon said with his head cocked to the side. "You just wanted to get my attention, so I came back." "And I'm guessing it worked," Violet said with a smirk. Damon paused for a beat to let this all sink in. He was being played by an 18-year-old virgin, and he walked right into her trap. A smile crept up his lips, and he just stared at her in amusement. "You really want this, huh?" he asked. "More than anything in my life," she replied. Violet started taking off his tie before slowly unbuttoning his shirt. Damon stood perfectly still, and he let her have her way for a moment. After all of his buttons were undone, Violet slipped the shirt off his toned body, and she moved to his belt buckle. Her hands grazed his groin, and Damon felt his muscles tensing. "Be careful, little girl. You don't know what you're playing with." Damon's hand went to stop Violet from doing anything further. "You don't know how much trouble you've caused me today." Damon's dark brown eyes pierced into Violet, and he saw her swallowing hard. He could see that she was afraid, but she was trying her best to appear strong. "I guess I'll have to take my chances then." Violet forced out a smile and moved Damon's hand away. She continued unbuckling his belt, and then she moved to unzip his pants. Without being told what to do, Violet was on her knees with her face to his groin. Her hands were rubbing against the bulge, and he noticed them shaking a little. Violet looked up at Damon, and their eyes met again. Her eyes were filled with fear, while his was filled with dark humor. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Damon said with a smirk. Violet didn't answer him in words. Instead, she pulled his boxer briefs down and revealed his erect manhood. That's right, being angry with her got him all riled up, and Damon was surely going to make her pay for it. Oh, this would be fun.